The disappointment. The disappointment comes rooted in a previous feeling of hope. You can't be disappointed if you didn't expect anything in the first place. And the first season of Blue Lock, while it hadn't been perfect in terms of animation, it did have quite notable moments, especially since the studio wasn't specialized in this anime genre. Considering the animation studio's most notable work was the lackluster slime anime, expectations were initially low. Sure, the slime anime was pretty good in terms of technical aspects, but that's because practically the entire studio has been focusing on that lately. When the Blue Lock anime was announced, there were many questions in the air. If you're even slightly familiar with the manga, you'll know it has a very distinctive art style. A drawing that a not-so-high prestige studio might not be able to bring to the screen. But the trailers came out, and at least in terms of character design, things didn't look bad. The first season's debut episode featured impressive animation, significantly raising expectations. This adaptation was unlikely to impress, as animation quality was on the decline. Until it reached a point where, honestly, we could consider it to have been a complete disappointment. But then the second season came and showed us that the first season was a damn masterpiece, at least in comparison. And look, you guys know that I usually do a review accompanied by a summary, chapter by chapter, talking in depth about every detail as much as I can. But having seen the few episodes there are of the second season, and above all, the trailer for the upcoming Under 20 match, well, I think we already have more than enough. However, first, a little bit of context. The anime's first season, Nagi's movie, and the second season each had a different director. This can significantly impact the decisions made regarding the production of the series. Just to give you an idea of what a change in director can mean, look at the first and second season of Jujutsu Kaisen. You'll notice how the art style, character design, camera angles, cinematography, and overall, everything differs completely between seasons. Usually, a change of director occurs due to creative differences, or simply the director had other projects. When the production committee wanted to resume the second season, the director had other commitments and couldn't continue. And I lean more towards the first option. Given the huge success of the first season, the man is also hugely successful in Japan. And most importantly, the episode count for the second season, and the surprisingly short gap of time between one season, the movie, and this second one. Because if I'm being honest, looking at the resumes of these three directors, none of them have anything really noteworthy. With all due respect, the most interesting thing is that the director of the first season also directed an episode of Haikyuu, just one. And I guess that was enough to leave him completely in charge of a sports anime. A sports anime that, moreover, is the most profitable sports anime currently. Let my sarcasm be noted in that sentence. At least the directors of Season 1 and the movie had a track record, unlike the director of Season 2, whose previous projects are questionable. Well, look, I'm gonna tell you all the animes this person has worked on. The Slime Anime Season 1, the Slime Anime Season 2, the Slime Anime Slice of Life version. Did this even exist during the first season of Blue Lock? Doing a storyboard for just one chapter and that's it? The best part? This director spent his entire career working solely in special effects. Despite his experience directing short stories for Slime, it was not comparable to directing a complete anime. Can you compare directing a slice of life where practically nothing happens because it's a life story to directing the most important sports anime of today? That's why I believe the big bosses, the people who only care about money, are behind this. Saw the success of the first season and told the director of the first
season, look,
people love this series. We want them to release a movie and a second season of 14 episodes within a maximum of a year. We don't care how it turns out. And the first director said, go fuck yourselves. I'm not going to stain my resume with that because I have dignity. He left, abandoning the project. The movie director arrived and performed well, at least for the day. But when he realized he had to direct a full 14-episode season, he got scared and refused, unwilling to tarnish his resume with the project. This is something only a desperate person would do, which leads to the next point. So they searched, and it seems they found someone so desperate that they credited him as a director in a trailer. But then, oh, surprise, it's not the same director we have now. Watch out. Also, all this about the higher-ups only thinking about money. To that extent, it can be quite confirmed with a small testimony. Some time ago, while that Colombian lady was deceiving the internet, claiming, while working at Ghibli, another person appeared who was less noticeable and remained more under the radar. A Chilean who goes by Martin Kings on social media and is indeed Latin American, who was officially credited as an animator on renowned series like Nier, Automata, the anime, and most recently on Dandadong. But he also participated in the second episode of the second season of Blue Lock, and I remind you, he is fully credited in the official credits, Chapter 26, Crunchyroll, minute 2041. And on his TikTok account, he uploaded a video explicitly talking about this topic. He initially planned to work on 5 chapters, but ultimately only completed the second due to unsatisfactory conditions and inadequate compensation. He also mentioned that the production committee only cares about money despite the final outcome. Many of the animations he created were substantially altered or removed entirely when he viewed the broadcast episode's final cut. He also mentioned that the blame lies with the production committee, not the animators, as their animations were likely heavily altered, because there was no time to do absolutely anything. You know, the typical thing where people criticize the poor animators. The producers exploited them to the point where they slept in the studio, insisting the anime had to be released immediately. So lower it, or else we will give you your $2 monthly pay, bastards. But well, I gave enough context already. So how did the final result turn out? In the first chapter, I had some hope since the drawings looked good. But not having any match in the first episode? The static animation was prominent, but it wasn't that disgusting. The characters were talking to others. The well-drawn visuals effectively concealed the animation flaws. However, I must emphasize that the second season was quite messed up. At least the digital effects of things like the game score or the screens in general are good. The first scene of the debut episode, a flashback of Rin with his brother, is visually stunning in its artistry and color palette. There were moments and transitions that felt too strange. And not to mention the running animations, which we will see will become a huge problem as the series progresses. The first chapter continues with the selection of teams that will compete to determine who will face the under-20 team. But already in the second chapter, when the football matches effectively start, that's when everything goes to hell. The meme about the moving PNGs is not a joke or an exaggeration here. Do you remember how I told you that the director of the second season had only been in charge of special effects? Well, it shows too much. Season 2 resembles TikTok edits that utilize the manga as a foundation and incorporate After Effects. Colors here, colors there, fog effects, flashes, explosions. A bunch of crap trying to hide the lack of movement there is. It's as if I suddenly grabbed my own PNG avatar to simulate that I'm not a drawing. I put a bunch of effects on top of moving lights, a disco ball to hide the fact that I'm a damn PNG. By the way, do you like shoes? You'll see them a lot in these football sequences. Could those be those terrible computer-generated imagery shoes? At one point, I completely dissociated and laughed uncontrollably every time I saw a shoe or a shitty football boot on the screen. I understand that computer-generated imagery is a tool that often helps a lot in saving time, but there are also usually many problems when it comes to integrating it well. Thankfully, the industry is improving with each new season, like the upcoming Season 3 of Attack on Titan. The Colossal Titan had poor computer-generated imagery, but in the final season, all the Titans were in computer-generated imagery, and it looked decent. Until we reached the final battle between the two Colossals, which looked incredible. High-quality computer-generated imagery requires skilled staff and ample time for refinement, which seems to have been lacking in this case. When you see these shots of several players running in computer-generated imagery and they all have the same damn default animation, they couldn't even make a minimally different animation for everyone. So it wouldn't be noticeable that everyone is running identically. It's like when you're in the Fortnite lobby and the guys synchronize their dancing. You see Cell, Goku, and these low-quality singers dancing together. It's wild. But having said that, you would have realized that this second season is not good. However, the fans still had a little hope, and it is that the first chapters of this season are nothing more than the prelude to the match against the under-20, to which many of the fans were begging. That, please. All this was nothing more than a historic budget saving so that the under-20 match would look as it should. I would have really believed it because, no kidding, these things look terrible. But all hope instantly crumbled with this trailer. A trailer that shows a preview for the under-20 chapter. And it's the same, or even worse, which is crazy compared to what we've seen so far. So, indeed, this second season is going to be complete crap. It's puzzling how a highly successful and well-known manga in Japan has adaptations of this quality. It seems like there's a curse with many popular works that they get a terrible anime, and I don't understand why this phenomenon happens. Although I'm not part of the anime and manga industry, I don't comprehend why such incidents occur. I hope the trailer editor simply selected the worst scenes by mistake. I hope that in these remaining weeks, something can be polished and make the fans receive something in conditions, but honestly, I would lower the hopes. As I said before, the first episode wasn't that bad, but it was simply because there was practically no action and because it was the first episode. Now, the question is, will I continue watching this series? No, obviously I won't read the manga, which, in fact, I stopped around the 20th. I will continue with the manga, which is a real work of art. I refuse to watch this anime, just like with One Piece. While the One Piece manga seems appealing to me, the Toei S anime adaptation is truly subpar. I can't understand how people can watch the One Piece anime without switching to the manga. It's totally repulsive in 90% of the cases. So, personal recommendation on my part, obviously read the manga for God's sake, because this second season is going to completely ruin any kind of experience in regards to this. And look, listen to me for once, because I'm not one of those who are always there. The manga is better, it's poorly adapted. I almost always advocate for adaptations even with their mistakes or changes. In this case, it's not unbearable or impossible like what happened with Uzumaki. Nothing like that. By the way, 2 things before I go. First, it's hilarious. Crunchyroll's YouTube uploads clips from the series as if they're the most epic things ever. But then you see how incredibly stiff the animation is. And it's like, I don't know how I was going to make a very horrible joke. I was going to make a very horrible joke. No, better not, right? I considered comparing this to people with intellectual disabilities, but that would likely be too inappropriate for YouTube and cause my video to be taken down. Secondly, if you watch this season's opening, almost everything is computer-generated imagery. At the 48th second, fucking Sai appears. And if you search for Sayatochi on Google Images, you get the same PNG that appears in the opening. I mean, it's literally a PNG. It's that PNG just put there with Sony Vegas. Oh my god, at least the laughs won't be missing.